Greetings. We're here to address a few issues that are at hand. I am Pastor Lawrence Christopher Bowles III, here the pastor of Redeemed by the Blood Pentecostal Church of God in Christ. The question is, where do we go from here? That's really the gist of this particular panel discussion and conversation. We have been witnessing all of the protesting and the marches, and all of that's good and dandy, but my goal was to really hear from our city. Of course, let me make this disclaimer that this is my wife, which is why we're sitting extremely close together. But I definitely want to hear from our city. My wife and I was brainstorming one night, and we decided that hey, let's have the chief and let's have the mayor and let's have the city officials come and literally address the community based on the fact that we do understand that there are a lot of questions that remain out in the community. And so our goal was to prepare a platform that is geared, engaged directly to our community viewers in hopes of us moving forward, in hopes of us doing something different in our city and in our community. So that's what brings us here. And so I'm going to start from my left and go to my right and allow each panelist, we're so grateful for them and their time here with us. And we're going to start from my left to my right to allow each panelist to introduce themselves and give a brief introduction of who they are. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor and First Lady Bowles, and it's awesome to be in your terrific sanctuary. We love the Redeemed by the Blood Church of God in Christ here in Kent and all the work that you do. I'm Todd Miner. I actually I live in Kent, own a home in Kent. I actually also own a business in Kent, employ 14 people here in the city of Kent. I go to church in Kent, and all my kids, they go to school or have some type of educational services in Kent. I'll tell you, I am just absolutely blown away by our community during this time, like in a time where the country is divided and there is so much malice and there's hatred, and then there's also love, and there's also coming together. And what I've seen in Kent is tremendous unity. I still think we have some opportunities, but I'm here today to just represent myself and my business and then my family. So thank you so much again for having us here.
Good evening. My name is Bill Boyce. I am a member of the Kent City Council. I've been on the Kent City Council now for a total of 8 years. I live in the city of Kent, moved here in 1984. My wife and I moved here because of the Kent School. At the time, we were thinking about having kids, and we looked around the different school districts and say, where we want our kids to go to school. At the time, Kent was ranked #1 in the state. So we moved into East Hill to Kent, been in the house ever since. 5 kids, all graduated from college, all productive members of society. I work for the Boeing Company. I'm an HR leader, been there for 30 years. Also, I spent 16 years on the Kent School Board of Education. Very, very passionate about our school. I think, they really is what help our kids move forward, right? So education is extremely important. I do the things that I do because I care about this city. I mean, I wasn't on the Kent City Council. I still be out here trying to make this city a better place. One thing that my father always taught me, he said, I don't care what it is, make it better. When you leave here, make this world a better place. Even if you got a beat up car, right? He said, still shine it up, shine the wheels up, make it look good, make it be the best that it can. So as long as I'm here, I will continue to be an advocate for the city. I will continue to be out there in the front line, addressing our community, answering any question that we have, and want to make sure that people feel like Kent is their home, that they feel free to walk around and go to places and not to have to worry about anything. Thank you.
I am Jacqueline Bowles. I am the wife of Pastor Bowles. I have been a certified family nurse practitioner for 28 years. I specialize in a number of specialties, but tonight's focus, I actually have a focus with clinical psychology and looking at the trauma of generational trauma and how that is a systemic issue with what is going on today in our world. I am excited to be here with the chief and with the mayor and the city council. And Brother Todd, respect you so much. My father just adored you. Bless you. And I'm just grateful because this opportunity is needed. We have to get to the table to where we talk about what are we going to do to move forward. The city of Kent is very unique in that the mayor is so personable and the chief of police is so personable and the members of council are not, I say they're not superstars, you know? I'm from Seattle, and so coming to Kent, 6 years ago now, we've been here. We're very vested. We're very vested in this area. We've made an impact here. We are purchasing this property and bringing a very large and flourishing early learning and child development center here. We're also bringing a behavioral and developmental center here as well to conquer the regional issues that are going on, mental health. We're going to have crisis intervention and a number of things to be able to help this city. So I am excited tonight and just looking forward to how I can help facilitate moving forward instead of going backwards. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dana Ralph, and I am the mayor for the city of Kent, a very, very proud mayor of what I believe is a pretty incredible city. I want to say thank you to Pastor Bowles and Lady Bowles for convening this conversation. What keeps going through my mind is there is a time and a season for everything, right? That is something that we know in our hearts. And there is a time for anger, and there's a time for tears, and there's a time to sit down and get to work and have the hard conversations to move us forward. That's where we're at. We're in the time of having those conversations and creating the actions that help us move forward instead of continuing to go backwards. And the negative needs to turn into positive. Redeemed by the Blood and the Bowles family has been invested in this community for a long time, and that's what makes these conversations so much more genuine and I think so much more valuable. It's about the foundation that has been laid. You heard Councilmember Boyce talk about there's work that we've already done, and I am proud of the work that we've done, and I also 100% acknowledge that there's more work to do. The foundation that we've built with our community, our residents, our business owners, our churches, our pastors, our youth, it matters and it will help us move forward. And it's these kinds of conversations that get us there. So I am grateful, really much looking forward to talking about this tonight.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rafael Padilla, Chief of Police for Kent, and it is my honor as well to be here. Pastor Bowles, Lady Bowles, we have worked together now for some time, and Pastor, you and I have had long discussions about the importance of getting together with people who do versus people who talk. One of the things that I have a fondness for and respect for in your leadership is that I believe you were placed here for a purpose. I believe you have been brought here to make change, and I actually believe it's divine that you and I have a relationship because there's work to be done and you are a doer in the community. And so it is an honor to even be here today. I've served the Kent community for 24 years. I've served as a police officer for 28 years. I chose this profession and I haven't regretted not one day. It's important to me. I subscribe to the leadership philosophy of being a servant leader, and I have an insistence that the Kent police culture be one of love and compassion. You have to care for people to be a Kent police officer. Right? We're not perfect. We've got work to do. I'm glad that today is another step in that work and our commitment to get things done. And so I'm very excited and I feel very blessed to be here. So thank you.
My name is Kanisha Blackman. I am, I would say, I go to Redeemed by the Blood. I am a member, active member of Redeemed by the Blood. I would say my husband and I, we are very much community driven. We are advocates for families that are low income and such. I'm just excited tonight to have a conversation that is needed for change. I'm so honored because our pastor and first lady are very, very much invested in this community and infecting change. So I'm really excited for tonight. I'm really excited. I think we're going to have a great conversation, and I think it's going to be healthy dialogue. We're going to jump right in. Is that okay? Okay, the first question, just so you all know, we're going to ask like 3 minutes per question. I will ask, and if someone wants to add on to what somebody else has to say, that's perfectly fine. The first question said, what changes do you want to see in the society of Kent? This will be for Chief Padilla. It says, the city's opposition is embarrassing and a roadblock to trust between the Kent Police Department and the community. How are you going to restore the relationships between the police department and the community?
Well, at the risk of sounding defensive, I would say that I'm here, right? And we've been here and we continue to work here. I think something that was important to note was said by Councilmember Boyce is we need to also acknowledge that we have been working, right? And not in a defensive way, and also to come back and say, have the humility to listen, to feel, and then to act, right? I am here and I will go anywhere to bridge those divides, to hear directly and to take input. And I think it's important to recognize there has been pain, there has been damage done, there has been bad things, and we have to listen and get through that. What I want to see in our society is a place where we get back to coming together to address issues. I want to see a world, this is going to sound idealistic, but I want to see a world where racism and hate isn't part of who we are at all in any realm or shape, and that's going to take work and time. I believe that our community is much different than what we see on TV. I don't accept the media narrative about who we are, and I won't let that be. This is a strong community that can come together and make a difference, and that's the society I know. That's the society I want to foster and grow. So I'm here. I'm here to roll up my sleeve. I'm here to get uncomfortable and have the difficult conversations. Tell me where I need to be, and that's where I'm going to be. We'll get the work done.
Yeah, I would just add to that if I could. You know, what is the city already doing? I think that there's a bunch of intersection points between the City of Kent Police Department and the community. I know one is the diversity task force that, you know, there's so many different members of the community that have that opportunity to have, you know, space with the chief, challenge the chief, you know, foster questions. There hasn't been a time as a business owner or as a resident in Kent where I haven't reached out to the police department, and there's been some pretty direct conversations, things that I wasn't specifically happy with, that the chief or one of his lieutenants didn't personally look into the matter and try to drive to resolution. So I'm super proud of the speed in which they move, especially on my first-hand account, again, as a business owner, as a resident. I would say, I think, you know, for society, what I'm looking for is a day that we once had where people of different opinions could sit down and have a conversation over, you know, at Nana's Southern Kitchen or at, you know, over a cup of coffee. You know, I just miss those. We used to be able to have difference of opinions, and it was okay to have a difference of opinions. Like, fundamentally, like, I'm not going to agree with every single thing that Chief Padilla does or Mayor Ralph does, but we should be able to sit down and have a conversation where we both know that our long-term intention is what's best for Kent. We may have a different path there, but we certainly should be able to express that, you know, express those differences in a civil manner.
Can I please?
Yes.
Well, I also want to add one or two. And just on behalf of the chief, you know, if you email him, if you call him, he's going to get back to you. Mm-hmm. And I get emails from things that I don't understand from the police department. I send it to the chief, and he responds, and he CC'd me right on the email. So, anybody in the city of Kent, I mean, if you got an issue with Kent, if something not going right, if some of his officers are not doing what they should be doing, I guarantee you, if you will call and email him, you're going to get a quick response. Because he really cares about the city, he cares about the troops, and you want to make sure everybody's treated equal. Thank you.
And I do want to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, this is all about that conversation. Thank you. I want to build a little bit on what Todd said about the being able to have the respectful dialogue and knowing we're not going to all walk away from the same, you know, with the same thoughts or opinions. when we can get to a place as a community where we assume positive intent, right? I am coming with an open heart and an open mind, and you're coming with the same, and the chief is coming with the same. That is how we make progress. I'm gonna tell on myself and be vulnerable here. These conversations around race and equity, my heart is here, my intent is here, but they scare me to death because I'm afraid I'm gonna say the wrong thing. I'm afraid that I'm gonna choose the wrong word, or I'm gonna choose the wrong phrase, and somebody's going to not assume positive intent, and we're not gonna make any progress. So I am here to tell the community, to tell you, I'm here, I'm vulnerable, I'm willing to have the conversation, and my only ask back is let's start from that place of knowing that we're all here to learn. I want to know, and I want to have the conversations, and we need to make it okay to do that. And I'm raising my hand and I'm saying I'm here for that.
And I want to say I think that's too where the community must play a big part. And a lot of what happens here in the city of Kent, because we put a lot of responsibility on the city officials, the chief of police, the mayor. But I believe that, even for myself, since I've been here in the city of Kent, from working with Chief Padilla, he was actually one of the first persons. He had spoke even during our opening of our ribbon cutting ceremony for our Team Redeemed Life Center. He was the main speaker, the keynote speaker for that event. Even since that particular day, throughout all of the role that we have been playing as a community, as a church, and let me say this, that we live in the city of Pacific. We wanted to come move to Kent, but it was a little too pricey. But we live in the city of Pacific. However, our church is here in the Kent community, and ever since we have been here, the city of Kent has been so embracing to us, even when it comes down to how to address the crime. I would go to Chief Padilla and ask him, can you give us the data so that we can go up on top of the hill and try to, be your arms, be your legs, because he can't fight everything. The mayor can't fight everything. So I just think I really want to highlight community. That's where the community comes in at. Is to be able to hold up the arms of our city officials, of city council people, and for the chief of police, the mayor. We're the responsibility, the job of the community is to hold up their arms and to hold and be their feet, be their hands, and really fight on their behalf. And so that I just really wanted to kind of highlight that as a community, we have always been here and supportive to the city officials.
Okay, this question is for Council Member Boyce. What kind of financial investments are you as a city willing to support our different community-based smaller organizations with regarding the sacrifices of change that they make, and how would they be willing to access it?
Thank you, Kanisha. Once again, the city is willing to do anything, everything that is possible to make sure business, people have a place to live. We talk about homelessness, right? We are willing to invest whatever it takes to be able to make those things taken care of. For example, we have a lot of small business. I will use Todd, for example. Very successful small business right here on the east hill of Kent. And I think we as Kent people, right, we need to go and support these small businesses. At the end of the day, it is a small business that really get this economy going. And I think Todd mentioned earlier, he got 14 employees, right? Which, I think that is a great size of employment for our young adults who are trying to learn those basic skills of what it's like to work and be productive, right? So from a small business perspective, I think the city is willing to do anything to try to help them get set up, or with the permits or whatever it is, to try to make sure they're successful, and also to make sure they stay in business. Another thing that we have is around the homelessness, right? And I'm sure we're going to probably talk a little more about that. That is a regional problem, right? We as a city, we cannot solve that by ourselves. but I think we are investing over $1 million plus to try to help that through our human services to try to reach out and touch some of the homeless problem. I think the mayor is sitting on a coalition to try to figure out how we are going to address homelessness as we go forward. So I think, as a city, we are here. We want to help. Our doors are open. And we also try to be proactive to go out there and work with different organizations.
If I could speak on that, coming from the perspective of a nonprofit organization, and I would have to say that the city of Kent, to me, goes above and beyond to make sure that all CBOs, meaning community-based organizations, churches, faith-based groups, boys and girls, whatever it is you are doing, I've never seen a city take so much effort to make sure the information is there. Now, you may choose to ignore it and not open the email. And I'm a realist. I don't, spend time living in fantasy land. But I have seen a lot of effort on their part from your office to make sure that the smaller organizations have had a chance. There was even an organization that came and did a survey and gave us a check for doing the survey to see why we didn't get a grant. Never heard of that before. Wow. Why you cared why we didn't get it. And then what it did was put us in the way and in the line for more grants that came down the pike. So it actually wanted to know why we didn't get it in 2016. And then in 2018, it opened the door for us to get it. So we have to be able to have information. A lot of that comes from systemic institutionalized racism. The fact that information doesn't make it to smaller organizations is systemic. We understand that. That's nothing made up or make believe. The fact that it never makes it to you, to your organization, and you're out here working hard and doing, that's a real systemic issue. What I want to say is that the government, the state of Washington, needs to filter funds to Kent like they do the larger cities. Kent can only do so much because they don't have an Amazon and a Microsoft and all of these big tax bases that are able to filter this money to smaller organizations. The government, Washington State, our senators and our offices in power need to make sure that economic funding comes from the top to the bottom to help. They can't do it by themselves. But we've got to go and knock on doors and make the people that we put in office do their job.
I'm going to second, third, and fourth that statement. And then follow up in the spirit of we can always do better. Talk a little bit about some of the things that we have going on and that we're starting to work on. And one of those things is a review of all of our purchasing policies. We do have purchasing power at the City of Kent. And I am committed, and I know that the council is, and through this budget process, we're looking at our procurement policies. How can we facilitate making sure that we're buying in Kent, that we're spending our money with minority and women-owned businesses, with small businesses, making sure that our nonprofits are seeing the funds that we do have filter into the community? It's a huge priority for us. There's some stumbling blocks in the way. Some of them are state laws that tell us we have to take the lowest responsive bidder, and we may have a business in Kent that we know can do the job, and we've got to be responsible with those tax dollars. But the other side of that is if we invest in Kent, that money comes back to our city, right? So the investment generates revenue. And it's the right thing to do. So we are putting together an internal group to look at all of our purchasing policies to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take the money that taxpayers invest in our community and turn that back around and push it out into the community.
The one thing I would challenge the city on is, like, how do we make sure that we reward the nonprofits that actually make an impact? Like, there's so many nonprofits, and there's a lot of people, as Pastor Bowes and Chief Padilla talked about, that do the talk but don't do the walk, right, and don't do the work. And so, like, what I would like to see as part of that coalition is for us to examine impact and reward grants based on impact, reward funds and attention based on impact. Because I do think that there's some organizations like this specific church that I'm sitting in that are just committed to actually making the city better. And you see them out there. You can judge them by their fruit. You can see them out there making a difference, and not just talking points.
I agree.
Moving right along. This question is for Madam Mayor. What are you all planning to do with providing the city of Kent with more job opportunities that are more focused on persons of color, free or low cost extracurricular opportunities for low income and persons of color?
Thank you. Job creation has been something that I have been committed to since I became mayor 2.5 years ago. It's a conversation that we have been having. Our procurement policy, looking at that's investing in Kent businesses so that they can hire Kent residents, right? That's a very real way that we are looking at building jobs, making sure that we are creating an environment in our city that is business friendly and incentivizing. How do people in our community, I've said this so many times and I believe it to my core, people should be able to live here and work here. They should be able to go down the hill or up the hill to work where they can be with their families. They don't have to spend all that time on the road, and it's something we've been committed to through economic development, drawing employers to our city, making sure that we're creating a place that is friendly to that job creation. The second part of it is investment in where I see investment in our youth and programs and things to make sure that income is not a barrier, right? Our kids should not have to say, I can't do that because my parents don't have the means. We have, even during the time of COVID, we've added additional money to our scholarship fund. So when we get back to recreation, when we can start having our kids out, participating in activities, there's additional funding that's been put into that to make sure we've got scholarships available. It's the running of the teen center at the Phoenix Academy. And quite honestly, it's finding community partners that are willing to help us do this work, right? It's how do we come together as a city? We can't do this alone. It's partnering with the school district, it's partnering with our churches, it's partnering with our organizations to provide those activities and guidance to our kids, and it's a team sport, right? We have to do this together.
I would like to ask, since you've implemented those things, how are you measuring the success of what you've already put in place?
So the scholarship program, we just did that when we did our budget cuts. We added that money, so we don't have metrics on that at this point because we haven't been able to roll that out. We have a lot of data on the success of the teen center, who's using it, those facilities, and the amount of the amount of usership, right? We have that data. Certainly, if anybody has specific questions on those numbers, I'm definitely happy to provide that. With job growth, we know that we've been able to add a couple thousand jobs to Kent so far, and for every job that's created, it creates additional jobs, right? So if you come into Kent to go to work, you also need to come into Kent for childcare and for your dry cleaners and a place to go to lunch. And so for each job we're adding on that front, we know we're adding sort of those downstream jobs as well.
And I want to ask one more question, I'm sorry. For the parents that don't know about it, or the people that don't know about it, how are you communicating that? How are you getting that out to people?
A whole variety of ways. So social media, email, TV 21, which is the Kent TV channel, our newsletters, every opportunity that we have to talk about it. In normal times outside of COVID, I am out in the community literally 7 days a week, talking to folks. And then the second ask, the community side, is if you know about something, tell your friend about it, right? That's what I want people to do is, hey, I know about this program, do you? That's where we work together.
And I'll also like to add too, over the last 8 months, we hired a communication leader for the city, which is something we really haven't had, and we had talked about this for quite some time. And I think the mayor hit on with the social media. I mean, you name it, every Facebook. I'm a Facebook. You name all of those things, right? We are out there, and we're pushing that information out there. So I think we are really doing a good job with all our youth. They follow those type social media type things, right? So I think that's one way we have made a great improvement from a social media standpoint as well.
And I'm going to follow back up on the job side. I forgot one thing, sorry. Another one of the initiatives that we put in place and is already underway when it comes to jobs that are available to our entire community, we're having our HR department review all of our job descriptions top to bottom. Want to make sure that there's not artificial barriers in those jobs. So there may have been rules that were put in place years ago that had a good reason or didn't have a good reason, or it just felt like the right thing to do. Want to make sure that the education requirements fit the job, that they're not artificial barriers. We want to make sure that that we're actually looking for skills that match the requirements. And I think that that's a really important thing. I think making sure that we're posting those jobs in a variety of places, different media sources for our ethnic communities, for everybody looking for jobs, not just that sort of, here, you come to us. We want to make sure we're reaching out to the community, and we'll be able to report out on the efforts of that work here as we go through the process.
Awesome. We are moving right along. This is a question that I would like anyone that would like to answer. The question says, what are you doing to provide a facility for homeless people where they can sleep at night in a safe environment?
Well, I'll open it up. And so in terms of a facility, a little bit outside the lane of the police department. But what I will say is that the city, through the police department and the human services department, have invested a substantial amount of money and resources to homeless outreach and develop. Our model is to be out there. We're out in the homeless camps. We're out on the streets. We have crisis response. We're networked with service providers for addiction, housing, mental health, you name it. And we bring that service to the community. Our approach is compassion, support, service, and then we move forward and try to place people. We've been fairly successful at that. We need to grow that. You may have heard lots of calls recently for what I call a co-responder model for crisis response, right? A lot of our homeless community have mental health challenges. And so the model is, if we know that the police officers are making interactions, right? But how can we partner with mental health professionals and counselors that can get people placed immediately in real time into services? So we're working on that. And so I'll kick it off. Outside of the facility realm, there's a lot of work going on that. Now, COVID has really dampened things down, but we are moving quickly. I've been in contact with a couple of legislatures looking to fund statewide this initiative. Speaking with the South King County Chiefs as late as this afternoon, we are looking to partner and put together regional money amongst the cities to fund something like that. We're working very close to getting that going. So you've heard of the Cahoots program down in Eugene, Oregon, very much like that. I will say that one of the models calls for not having law enforcement respond, and I will be the first as the chief of police say, if we do not need law enforcement officers to show up to a problem, let's not have that happen. But there is a lot of the calls that come in where safety is the first thing that needs to be taken care of, and then we can bring compassion and service. So that would be my input on that.
I could speak specifically to the facility. We know that permanent housing is the best solution. Shelters don't, it's an emergency response, but it's not healthy. It's not a good setting for anybody to be living in that congregate shelter situation. So we've got, going back to partnerships, right now in a very real time, Catholic Community Services is building a housing development, an apartment building up on the West Hill that's going to be 80 plus units of permanent supportive housing. So it's our most vulnerable population having access to an apartment of their own, where then they can start working on all of those issues that led them to being homeless, right? Mental health, substance abuse, all of those kinds of things. And it takes the pressure off of not having to figure out where you're going to stay at night or where you're getting your next meal, and allows folks to work on those really hard, important issues in their own life. One of the things that we have done at the city is negotiated with the Catholic Community Services in some of their permitting requirements for things like parking stalls, right? We know that most people coming into permanent supportive housing aren't going to have 1 or 2 cars like you would in a regular multifamily development. So we have spots that are guaranteed to Kent people, right? When they open those, there's 10, I don't know that that's the exact number, but spots of those units that are going to go to people that are from Kent, that are homeless in Kent, to make sure we're taking care of our community. So some very real work being done on that front.
And just quickly, I want to add, I think I said this earlier, right? This is a regional state problem, right? And Kent, we cannot solve this problem by ourselves, because it's a lot bigger than us too, right? And I think Lady Bull talked earlier about going up to Olympia, talking to our legislator. I mean, that's where the funding need to come from, because it's not just Kent versus Renton versus Federal Way. I mean, it's everybody. So if we can get money from the state to kind of help out across the state, it will help solve the problem. Thank you.
And I love what you said, Mayor. Homelessness, I've done extensive research on the actual question, which is, how did you get here? You have to ask the question to a homeless person, how did you get here? Because you don't arrive at homelessness, just arrive there. And I love the fact that you're actually going to have on-site case management, and temporary shelters is really only a Band-Aid for the problem. It does not solve it. When you pack me up and you pack me, especially in COVID, it's very dangerous right now to even put me in a shelter because I can't stay socially distanced and stay hygienic and et cetera. So the Catholic Community Services coming. When is that going to be built?
They are in the process now. I don't have a date, but I'm within the next less than a year.
Wow, that is amazing. And that's what we're going to have is more of that, moving you from transitional housing to stable housing to on your own. But it's a process. It's a process for people coming from never having to pay any bills at all to teaching me how to pay rent, to giving me life skills. And it's going to take those small community organizations working together to help make that platform solid. You know, you got to build that infrastructure to be able to work together when I need childcare. Who's going to do that? So can you teach me how to do a resume? You know, can you teach me how to dress so I can dress for success and be able to pass my interview? And am I working with companies that when I get there, they already know I'm coming with a lot of baggage? So, you know, kind of help me out. Help me be able to get that first job that I needed. So we are here, Team Redeem Life Center, we are here willing to be one of those partners for you. Yes.
I would also just add, I think, you know, the business community has a place here as well. You know, in starting our business, you know, one of our first employees, we were building out the restaurant, and we were leaving late. I don't know, it was 1 o'clock in the morning or so, right before we were going to open, and we saw a young lady in the rain walking, and my touched my mom's heart. She said, roll down the window. She said, honey, where you going? She says, I just lost my job, and I'm just gonna walk all night because I got nowhere to sleep. And you know, we ended up hiring her, and we put her up at a period of time, and then you know, now she's one of our top employees, and she has an apartment, and she graduated, got her GED from the place up on the hill, the Kent or the you know, the E or iGrad or whatever it's called, and it's something I'm super proud of. And again, like, but what it takes is the city to create an environment where businesses can thrive, and then the compassion of people will open up to be able to help solve some of these problems. Because at the end of the day, like, I definitely am gonna hold my government officials accountable to be good stewards of the tax dollars, but a lot of the work has to be done by the people in the community, whether it be the nonprofits, the faith-based organization, or just the business community.
I would like to ask Lady Bowles, would you say that not only the economic piece for as far as the homelessness, but would you say there's also a mental health piece? Could you speak on that, please?
Yes, we are in a serious crisis here in King County. If you saw yesterday on the news or the day before, you actually heard Dan Satterberg address how many youth, I believe it's ages 16 to late 20s, have been killed this year, and 73% were African American. That's a health crisis. That's not a violent crisis. That's not a police crisis. That's not a political crisis. That is a health crisis. We've got a problem that our young people are dying out here by the droves. That is a mental health systemic issue that we are dying. And I'm talking about by the droves. Yes, just being killed. So we've got to understand something's got to be done. Something's got to be done from a regional level, and it filters down to our community. We've got to start in our homes. Something is wrong in homes, and it starts, I can see it. It actually starts in my infant room. When I see a baby come in and you've already got issues because you were born to a teen mother, or you're born and your father's incarcerated, those are issues that are going to be stacked against you called ACEs. Adverse childhood events that you are actually on this pipeline, as they call it, headed to prison if we don't fix it. We've got to fix the mental health issue, and it starts in our homes. And it's going to take people that look like people, the people that are being affected. I'll be very real with you. People of color have to hear it from another person of color to be able to understand it, because we've been traumatized. Because Tuskegee experiments and Miss Evers boys, if you watch that movie, we've been used and we've been abused in research, etc. So it's going to take some of us that look like the persons that are being affected to start in our communities. Exactly what Brother Todd is saying. It's going to take those individuals to just start and working. But the mental health crisis that we have is drastic. And we got to start somewhere to start fixing it. To stop putting Band-Aids on it, to stop covering it up, to stop sweeping it under the rug, and actually deal with our problems.
And that's good, because not only are we sweeping it under the rug and not dealing with it, but we're blaming everybody else for it. And that's what I have saw, even while we went walking up on top of the hill and really dealing with the issues at hand regarding, the young people. They literally, as you really talked to them and communicated with them, they would literally communicate to you and say that my home is a mess. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day. Yeah. So, I mean, and I hate to fast forward, but the issue is not, to me, and this is just me speaking as a pastor, as an ex-gang member, as a 9-time felon, that the issue is not, and again, I can say this because this is my platform that we allow to occur, but it's not the matter of defunding the police. That's just my personal opinion. It's not the matter of defunding the police. If anything, it's the matter of parents need to be parents and stop allowing and really teach them and stop allowing or putting the responsibility, and I've said this years ago, and stop putting the responsibility on the city to raise your kids. And I think that's kind of what's happening, that we have literally released our kids into the real world without any training, without any substance, without any guidelines, and we just expect for them to live, and this is what they know. This is all they know. To shoot up one another, to sell drugs, and then we blame the police when we get caught. So, I mean, that's kind of like with my situation. I literally blamed the police. When I got incarcerated, I confessed to the crime, but I still blamed the police. You shouldn't have arrested me. So, I mean, I think that's one of our biggest issues here, whether if it's with homelessness or gang violence, it's that this is what our kids are seeing, and we're expecting other people to raise them.
Thank you so much. Chief, would you like to say something?
He stole my thunder right there. I was going to reaffirm what you were saying, Lady Bowles, in that, in 28 years, I've been a narcotics officer, I've been a street crimes detective, bike, you name it. I'm old, so I've done a lot of things in law enforcement. One of the most significant turnarounds that I have seen as a law enforcement professional was the work that this congregation did last year up on the East Hill. In the area of 240th and 111th, it's affectionately referred to as the McChevron area.
Right.
I personally, as a law enforcement leader, have dedicated time and resources to try and turn things around up there. Aggressive enforcement, right? Community meetings, social media blasts, you name it, we've tried it. In 1 year and 1 summer, the engagement from this congregation to go out and be a part of the community and show them for the first time that somebody cared. We went from 3 homicides and 23 plus shootings in that neighborhood to 1 unfortunate homicide and almost no shootings the year before. And to reaffirm how effective that was when people own their own community, I regret to inform you the numbers are back the other way this year because we're not there. We're not there. It is a huge case study and has changed the way I look at it, and I'm a believer. When a community takes ownership of itself, that's where change occurs.
I just want to add one other thing to what Pastor Bowles was saying, and you're spot on. I think the other piece that's missing is that we need to have a work environment for these people too, right? They need to know, get a job, and we need to be able to have business that offer these people a job so they can work and help pull them off the street. Sometimes the system is set up so our young African American people can't get a job. Right. And then that allow them to do all those things that they should not be doing, right? So it kind of go hand in hand, right? I strongly believe that, it starts at the home. That's where it all started at. But also, as a system, we need to have a place where our people can go and get a job. So I think that's the other piece that I'd like to add as well.
Thank you so much. This next question, Mr. Todd, can you please speak on transparent non-political platforms and opportunities for communication between community leaders and or businesses and their constituents with the goal of mutual involvement in working together to address problems in our community?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. Like, how many times can businesses and residents get together where there's no motives? Like, the motive is just to make things better and to remove the ego and who gets credit and those things. Like, I would just love to have such a platform. I will tell you, obviously, we have some terrific organizations in the city, the Chamber of Commerce being one. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. And then, of course, all of the faith-based organizations, the Police Chiefs Diversity Task Force. But I think that that's a gap. Fundamentally, I think that's a gap, and I think that we need to find a space where, the business community can get together and there's no egos, or again, there's no one trying to get the credit, but just to solve the problems. I would say systemic challenges that you have, like the systemic challenges, systemic racism, systemic, opportunity prevention, I would call it. Like those things that happen, like empowering people through education, empowering people through ownership, empowering people through, again, opening your own business. It's the autonomy you get is just unbelievable. Like, my day job, I work for one of the most powerful companies in the world, but I can't guarantee my cousin a job. Doesn't matter how senior I get in that organization, if he has a felony, I can't guarantee him a job. Doesn't matter who I am. But if I can own my own business in a city, I can employ whoever I want, I can pay them what I want, and I can give them the tools, resources, and technology to, change the course of their life. And so what I challenge over and over again the public officials is to create a business-friendly environment so business owners can create jobs, and then the community, you patronize the businesses that take care of the community.
I'd like to address, thank you for that, Todd. I support that 100%. There's no question. That's how we take care of each other, right? I want to challenge that question a little bit about the creation of platforms to engage that are not political. I'm going to start by saying, I said this earlier, being mayor is way more than my job. It is a 7-day-a-week, 22.5-hour. You can ask my family, right? They miss me, I think. At least they tell me they do. There is no place that I am invited to that I do not go. I have been to our churches, to our mosques, gurdwaras, community events, birthday parties and anniversaries and weddings for people that I have never even met because I was invited. Barbecues, right? There's the really fun stuff, but I do that because I want to know what our community needs, and I want to know what they're asking for, what they're thinking, and what they're feeling. We have a ton of city events that we put on: coffee with the mayor, coffee with the chief, Facebook Live events. There's a whole bunch of ways that we're working, but if people don't show up, we can't have a conversation. It takes two sides, right? I can do all of those things and be all those places, and the sad part is it's the same handful of people that are at all of those events. And it's not because I want it to be that way. And it's the same community organizations that invite me places, right? I'm super comfortable here because I have been invited here. And I have shown up and we've created a relationship. And so my ask is to the community, I want authentic, real engagement, and I don't want it to be around politics. I want it to be around what do we as neighbors need and how do we support each other. So the ask is, let's both show up.
May I ask you, do you have an idea as to why people don't show up?
I think that's a tough question. It's a good question. I think part of it is that we all go through our lives, we're super busy, and unless there's an issue at hand, something that as people, our needs aren't being met, there's something specific, something that our neighbor did, or the person down the street, or something that the city did, I think that there's an apathy sometimes, and I think there's also just not knowing how to engage. So that's where I'm committed, right, is I want to help people figure out how to be engaged. We're all busy, and we're doing a lot of stuff, and it just, we need to stop and pause and take the time to know that if we're going to be committed to change together, we both show up.
Thank you.
I want to ask, what is the actual network of communication based around? Like, I mean, as far as the invite, I mean, is it the businesses within the city of Kent, the churches within the city of Kent that's not promoting it good enough on behalf of the city to encourage them to come? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want us to just say we're cool with it. I want to fix it. And if I can be of help and to encourage my other peers, I think we can come up to a resolve dealing with that.
Yeah, I think it's all of that. I think there's a belief somehow that as a city, we're too busy, we've got something else to do, there's something that's not the priority. I'm going to speak for the chief and myself. There is not an invite that we have received that we haven't said. I had an 18-year-old recent high school student email me 2 weeks ago and say, I just want to have a conversation with you. You know what? We had a Zoom call and we talked about whatever was on his mind. So I think it's everybody's realizing that we need to share that message, right? You know that you can pick up your phone and call me. You can call the chief. So then I need you to tell your friends that, and I need you to tell your network that. I need you to tell your congregation. If we're all really good at complaining about things and not willing to take the next step. So when we hear our neighbors saying this isn't right or that's not right, my question is, did you call and tell somebody? Did you ask them how you're going to fix it? And it's really, I think, just pushing each other to do better in that communication.
And I'm kind of almost convinced that it's a mentality of I'll reach out when I need you. The minute something goes wrong, then I need you. Opposed to, and again, I'm a proactive thinker. I'm a forward thinker. I'm the type of person that I want to fix something before it even happens. Mm-hmm. That's my confession.
You have a chief that believes, so I'm going to believe that, but I think it's a perfect chance for the chief to reiterate, right? It's about building the relationships before the crisis happens.
Absolutely. You know, we don't want to wait till something goes sideways in our community. We've talked about it a lot of time at Diversity Task Force, cultural community boards. What I want is a relationship where we are not showing up because there's a problem. We're just showing up because we want to be there. We're showing up because it's our community, right? You know, to add to what the mayor said, we'll go anywhere. I first time in my career, I went to a planning meeting to protest the police. And we went, right? Because that's our job, that's our role. We want to be there, and it doesn't matter what the conversation is, we need to hear it, right? We need to hear it and we need to be there. So absolutely, we're down. Where do we need to go? There is one person I believe in city government that works more hours than me, and she's sitting right here. But I can affirm that close behind that, the police department's there. You got a barbecue? Let us know. You know, we've been doing drive-by birthdays. We can't get to all of them. You know, whatever. What does it take? What does it take? We're in schools, we're in programs, you know, so.
And I also believe in giving back. And I don't mean to highlight this, but you all have been there for us in so many different occasions. There was a time to where when we walked up on top of the hill, the chief wanted to be there. I know you wanted to be there. I
think we had a council meeting that night.
I know. I remember. Yeah, the chief came, and I believe he came in plain clothes. He was that determined to be there. Even sat there listening to an angry person, not realizing that he was the chief of police. But
undercover chief.
Undercover chief. But I really want to attest to that their heart is there. And I believe as a community, if we back them by giving back to them, we went as far as to, I had contacted the chief one day and says, hey, we want to feed on behalf of the Redeemed by the Blood in the community. We want to feed all of the city officials. There was a barbecue, Charles Davis, who came to an apartment here in the city of Kent. And just because we know all of what they have done, all of the support that they have shown here at Redeemed by the Blood, we said, look, we want to feed the city of Kent. Immediately, the chief got on it, sent as many people as he could, short notice, and we fed them. And I just feel like we can't just take. It's even as me as a pastor, I give so much, but I need restoration sometimes. I need prayer. I need somebody to impart back into me and pour back into me. And I believe that's kind of where we stand with our city officials, that we see them, all of the hard work that they do. It's time for the community to stand up and pour back into them. They only have so much energy. They only have so much inside of them. And if we as a community pull together and show our city officials that we're in 100% support to them, I believe they will be even more empowered to continue to do the work that's needed within our community.
They're not superheroes. They're not Superman, Batman, Wonder Twin powers. They can't plug up in their finger and get it. We've got to give it back. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I do want to add, because I know we want this conversation to be about some deliverables, right? And we're working. There's a lot going. But in terms of of breaking down that disconnect, particularly in the realm of police officers. It's true. Our officers predominantly do not live in the communities they serve. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's safety reasons, there's economic reasons, but put that aside for a second and focus on what could be. And we've been really thinking about it and working on it. And so you're going to see very soon that every new officer that comes into the city that we hire will start their careers by doing service in the community. Okay? So if you can imagine a vision where a new officer, before they get one iota of police training, indoctrination, or onboarding, their first duty is to show up at the Life Center here and serve, and show up at the YMCA and be with the youth and run programs, and to go to GEM and be a mentor. And I don't care what it is, get to the food bank, get to some of our elderly care centers and serve, and get to know their community before they are given the honor of the authority to protect and serve. And imagine the inoculation that will build up for the officers, where they know, 10 years from now, they are interacting with the kids they were playing basketball with at the Y, right? Think about that, because I can't get to a place where I can compel officers to live in the city that they serve, but I can do things that will to make them see the humans and value the humans and the people and make them their people. And so you're going to see that. That's going to start this year.
Awesome.
So we're moving on that, and we're open to all kinds of innovative ways to break down the divide.
Thank you. The next question says, what would you like to ask the Kent Chief of Police and the Mayor regarding policies and racism? The first question is, how do you feel, I want to ask the Chief this question, how do you feel about defunding the police, and what do you think it would change if it were to happen?
So I'll just start with the short answer. I think that defunding the police is not the answer. And that's easy for me to say in this uniform with my role. It's self-serving, but I truly believe it as a community member, it's an issue. And I'll explain why. So the first thing that comes to mind is I look at where we have our officers deployed to protect and serve. And the honest truth is we use the data to determine where our high crime areas, where the violent crime is, and that's where we put resources. Unfortunately, and we all know, right, those neighborhoods also have a high concentration of people of color. So when you take those resources, and I should back up and start with this, the predominant thing in our budget is payroll. There is not a significant way to cut the budget of the police department without cutting police officer positions. On top of that, we just went through a cut because of the COVID impacts on our budget. So I've already lost 7 positions. So if you look at that, what you're saying is the communities that we want to serve and enhance service to, in actuality, my biggest fear is you're going to take away services. You'll have less ability to respond to some of the violent crimes. We're talking our murders, our shootings, human trafficking. Less response time, not more, and less ability to deal and prevent the crime in the first place. So there's that. The other part of the issue for me that is somewhat confusing is that I believe that the most recent movement was focused on the issue of racism and hate in law enforcement. And so I'm a little confused as to why defunding a police department would fix that issue. That is an issue of culture, that is an issue of policy, that is an issue of accountability. It is not an issue of money, right? If we don't have the right people of character, moral fortitude, doing the job because they love people, it doesn't matter about the other things. That's where it starts. So that is a big concern of mine. And so what I'm looking at, and I know the mayor would like to speak to this, why does it have to be an either or, right? Why is the conversation to pit one very needed service of public safety against an equally needed cause for mental health and and community service and outreach, right? Why does it have to be one or the other? Let's find a way to make it both, right? So that's where I stand on it. And again, I can be accused of being self-service, but I believe that. I really do.
I'd like to add to. I'm one of seven council member, and I would say defunding the police is not the right way. It's not the right way. I mean, if you look at the city of Kent, per population, we should have roughly about 190 officers. Okay, we have about 160, so we're already 30 short, right, from being able to serve the whole entire community. So I think Chief kind of was spot on. I strongly believe, if anything, we need to give more funding to the police. We also need to create another bucket for the mental health and domestic violence, those type of things there, right? We definitely need that. But at the end of the day, no matter when you run a large corporation, you do have a couple of bad apples there, and sometimes the bad apples make it bad, right? So I think it's our job, as a leader, to make sure we get rid of those bad apples, so don't destroy your corporations or don't destroy your police department, right? And I think the chief, I know for a fact there have been some changes made where we had some bad apples and we got rid of those bad apples, right? So to me, I strongly believe 95, 97% of our police officers are really, really good. I mean, all the police officers. It's that small percentage, that squeaky wheel, which makes everything look bad. And I think as we move forward, those bad officers, we need to move them. Those bad people in the corporation, we need to remove them, right? And then at the end of the day, we need 2 buckets of money, fully fund our police officer, and take care of this other issue. It's not either or, it's both. Thank you.
So you heard both the chief and Councilmember Boyce talk about it. It does not, should not, and cannot be a one or the other, right? It cannot be, we are not going to provide police services so we can have caseworkers, mental health providers, services, and we can't have services if we don't have police officers. One of the things that I've been talking to people a lot about, we're hearing things like homelessness response should only be done by mental health providers, crisis counselors. There's a lot of times when somebody's in crisis, it's an extremely dangerous situation. So to send a 25-year-old, newly graduated social worker into a violent situation is reckless. It's not okay, and it's not being concerned for the person in crisis, and it's not being concerned for the person providing the service. Some of the most dangerous things our officers respond to are traffic stops and domestic violence calls. I've been hearing in the community we should not have police doing those things. They're dangerous, and I 100% believe in the co-responder way of doing business, because it means that we've got all the things that we need. I also know that things like homelessness, I'm pretty sure there's not a single police officer that signed up and said, you know what, my job is going to be to help our homeless community. Serve, absolutely, but connections to services and those kind of things, but it's a job that our society has put on our police officers because we haven't funded the rest of the resources. And we need to figure out a way to do both. It cannot be a one or the other situation. That is a no-win for everyone.
Chief Padilla, I would like to personally ask, does that change the way you protect and serve because people want to defund the police?
Absolutely not. I really appreciate that question. You can imagine, and I assure you, our officers, so let's take the protests and the march that we had back on June 11th. Phenomenal event. I think it was a historic event for our community, and I think it should serve as a model to the rest of the world of how to have an exchange of ideas and concepts in a peaceful way. So let me start by that. Half of those officers came in that day, and I drugged them in from their day off. I canceled their day off. I mandated them in to come in, and if you can imagine what that means to an officer, right? You're going to come to a very large-scale protest about how messed up you are, right? They did it. They did it, and they did it well. And I assure you, they showed up the next day, and they went out, and they did their job. I have served people that have been very, very angry, very mean-spirited, and it does not shake me. I have a job to do. It's professional. I don't think in any way, shape, or form it impacts or should impact. Now, I know that it can, and that's a concern. We're going to serve regardless. What it would mean to defund us in addition to the dangerous parts of not being able to respond, to me what it means is that we will have to make some priority cuts and decide what it is we're not going to do because we just can't. And I'm looking over at Todd, where a lot of the things that happen that are outward facing is some of the service things we do for our businesses, some of the extra patrols and the response times for alarms. Those are things that have to be weighed against response to shootings, right? And staffing for that. And so it's I've given you a long answer to no. It does not matter. If our community decides if that's a decision that's made, we will adjust accordingly, we will show up, and we will do our jobs.
Thank you.
I want to say, too, we are still dealing with the issue that in King County alone, there has been shootings, 42% 25 and younger, and 73% African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
We still got to face the reality that has nothing to do with the police, that has nothing to do with anything else. It has something to do with each other. So we're in a crisis, and I think that that's what we need to really face, and instead of, again, as I've stated before, placing the blame on other people, that's basically you're holding responsible to clean up your own mess.
Thank you, Dr. Bowles. Madam Mayor, this question is for you. When do you intend on dropping the inquest lawsuit and regaining the trust of your community?
Okay, I appreciate that question very, very much. There is a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding around the inquest and the inquest process and that lawsuit. It's an extremely complicated legal process, and I can tell you, I'm going to start with why Kent entered into it. The primary reason Kent joined the lawsuit in the inquest process is really a jurisdictional and legal question about whether or not the King County Executive has the unilateral authority to change the inquest process, which is set forward by state law. The intent of the inquest process is to determine the manner and cause of death, period. The King County Executive has put a pause on the inquest process in 2018. So there's maybe the first place of misinformation. It wasn't the city of Kent, Auburn, Renton, or Federal Way that paused that process and said the inquests that are in the pipeline shouldn't go forward. It was the King County Executive that said we're gonna pause this. Remove that pause after making significant changes to the process that we just do not believe are legal for a variety of reasons. There's authority that is granted to cities, there's authority that's granted to the King County Executive, there's authority that's granted to the state. And that's our primary question. We have issues with the process and the fairness and how the representation occurs as well, but that's our primary issue. We've heard a demand from the community to drop the inquest so that justice can be served for the families of people that have been killed by police officers. The thing that's not being publicized and not being talked about is the city of Seattle was the first jurisdiction to file the lawsuit. On the same day, the family members of 2 Seattle residents that were killed in confrontations with the police department also filed a lawsuit. So even if Kent said we disagree, or we're going to back off and say we don't think it's a jurisdictional issue, we don't think there's problems with the process and the fairness of how both sides are represented in that, even if we stop today, the family members have agreed to a stay of the inquest process to get through the legal battle. So it wouldn't change anything. It's not, and I want to be 100% clear, the inquest process and our lawsuit have absolutely nothing to do with justice being done or police accountability or any of those things. It's a separate process. The King County prosecutor still has the absolute authority to file charges in every one of those situations. They're independent. And I do want to ask the chief to speak to some of the details of our issues. But I think the really big thing I want to get across is for me as a city, it really is about what is legal and what is not. And we also want to see a statewide process, right? That's the other piece of this. Right now, King County is out there on their own doing something separate. So for cities like Auburn that are in both King County and Pierce County, it's handled completely differently. So not only for the city, which is where I have to make sure we're taking care of, but I also want to take care of our community. Family members should be able to know what to expect, and it shouldn't make a difference whether they live in King County or Pierce County or Snohomish County or Benton County for that matter.
Yeah, so I'll add to some of the specifics. So a little bit of background. Prior to the changes made by Executive Constantine, the participation in these inquests by law enforcement officers was 100%, specifically for Kent. So Kent officers who had a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate themselves participated 100%, voluntarily, because it was a fair system established by the rule of law and court procedure, which is all that anybody can ask for, right? There has to be a fair process. This process presented took away constitutional rights that we believe that every human being should have. For instance, one of the rules was not to have representation unless the officer was compelled to testify at the inquest. So think about this. You're charged with a crime. You hire a defense attorney or one is appointed to you, and they say, you are being charged with these things. What's the first thing every good attorney is going to tell their client? Do not incriminate yourself. Be quiet and do not. So from an attorney's perspective, the fact that the officers were voluntarily participating and answering questions and giving testimony, most attorneys would say you shouldn't even do that. That was occurring. Now, because of the adversarial way in which this has gone about, where you have to testify but you don't get representation, I'm pretty sure there's this thing called the Constitution and the Fifth Amendment that assures that all of us should have that right. And that's what we're really talking about, is that one man has the authority, or so that's the legal question being asked, to strip that away. And that's one of many issues, right? We are all supportive of some of the reforms that elevated the sides of the families of the deceased, right? Getting representation and giving them access to information, outstanding. Not a problem, not an issue. What we're asking for as law enforcement officers is just make sure you don't put us through a process that's unfair and takes away our rights. That's really what it comes down to.
Thank you. We will have one last question, and then this will be to Councilman Boyce, and then we will ask everyone to spend about 60 seconds of lasting remarks, and then we'll put it in the hands of Dr. Bowles. The last question is, are you all willing and able to do a thorough review of policies and procedures and revamp or eliminate anything that is old or irrelevant based on our demographics and bring law and codes into the 21st century?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
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 And just elaborate a little bit more on that. We as a council, we've been talking about looking at some of our policy and procedures. I think the mayor just got to talking about, even from a hiring perspective, right? We want to make sure that there's nothing in the hiring job description that prevents someone from not getting a job. I would say if you look at the city council, we represent the city. It's a very, very diverse council, right? So, and we feel pretty good about that. So, the short answer, yes, we're willing to open up the books and making sure we're doing things right, making sure people feel like they're being created equal, because it's not really how I feel, right? It's how they feel. Do they feel like they're being created equal? Do they feel like they're getting a fair chance? Do they feel like the city is open to everybody and they can come in and feel like they're part of the city? So yes, we have already had some discussion over that, and don't have a problem issue with that, not at all.
We'll start with 60 seconds from Mr. Todd, and we'll go around, and then we'll go back and put it in the hands of Dr. Bowles. Thank you all this evening for letting me be your facilitator.
Well, thank you so much. You did an amazing job facilitating. And Pastor and First Lady Bowles, thank you so much for having this important conversation on just a host of issues that's facing our community. I'll tell you, the audacity of hope. Like, I believe that we could come together. We will come together. We'll be stronger post-COVID, post many of the civil unrest than we were before. Scrutiny is a cleanser. And the fact that we are scrutinizing, whether it be our public officials, whether it be our health officials, whether it be ourselves internally, and looking in the mirror, as Pastor Bo says, it will cleanse us and make us better and stronger and get better. I think that Police Chief talked about proximity, and I believe that proximity breeds empathy. The closer that we can get together, the more empathetic that we can be for each other's points of views. So visiting each other's, common places, whether that's up in the community or that means us as community members coming down to City Hall and getting involved in the chamber meetings or the other platforms that we have. But lastly, I would just close with, I'm super proud to be in this city, to have residents in the city. I'm really impressed with our officials. I love my police chief. I love my mayor. I really like my city council.
I know I'm going to eat this weekend. It won't be Nana, okay?
I like my city council. But I would just say, unequivocally, as a community, we got to stick together. We can't let outsiders come in and tell us how we're going to interact within Kent. We can't let people from Seattle or Bellevue dictate what we're going to do in Kent and how we're going to interact with each other. And so, again, I love the collaborative nature and the culture that we have in the city. Super, super excited about our future.
Thank you, Kanisha. Pastor Bo, First Lady. Todd, you're spot on. You kind of stole my thunder there a little bit. But at the end of the day, what I was about to say, there's a lot of stuff going on in Washington, D.C., right? But we're Washington State. We can't get those confused, right? And we're not Seattle. We don't want to be Seattle. We are Kent, right? And I think, we care about the world and we care about our surrounding city. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure we have our own stuff together. We want to make sure people in Kent feel like they are part of Kent, that they are Kent. I think we are Kent, right, Mayor? Exactly. That's what we want people to say. Proud to live in Kent. Know they can go anywhere, talk to anybody, and feel respected. That's what we want for this city here. And at the end of the day, as long as I'm on this council, and I think we have the right leaders in place, definitely the right community people in place, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And I think we just need to be focused and, just the basic rule that our parents taught us, treat people the way you want to be treated. If we all do that, we're going to be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanisha, for being such an amazing facilitator. And thank you, all of you on the platform. I have to ditto and say that I do love our mayor, and I love our chief of police, and I love, not like, I love our city council. God gave me the DNA of being a dreamer. He really, really did. As a little girl, I used to fantasize and dream about the things that I could be and things that I could do. And he spoke to me and said, Kent could be that city that could show other cities how to do it. I'm black. You're white. We can do this. We can do this. We can show other cities how we can break these barriers down. We don't have to come with hidden agendas. We can do what Brother Todd said and show other cities. Don't let somebody tell us how we're going to do it. We're unique for a reason. And the reason that we can sit at the table, multicultural, colors, and all kind of ethnicities and backgrounds and genders and creeds and whoever you claim you want to be, we can all sit together and show that we can be that model city. So I am here for the fight. I appreciate, because I know you have a busy schedule. I know you had to pencil us in weeks ahead. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for coming out here tonight and being a part of this platform. And thank you, Dr. Bowles, for always, being that bold one to just say, I'm going to do it. I'm like, they don't have time.
Thank you, Kenesha. Thank you so much for facilitating and asking these questions that are so important to our community. I am grateful for this opportunity. Pastor and Lady Bowles, you're rock stars in this community, right? You're doing the right thing and you're doing it for the right reason. And it is what fills me up and inspires me. And it's why I want to be a part of everything that's happening in Kent. And I want people to know that it's not a knee-jerk reaction to the protest. It's not a knee-jerk reaction to what's happening in Seattle or Washington, D.C. or any place else, because we have already been committed to doing this work, right? And I don't want there to be confusion that saying that we're already doing things means we're not going to do more and that we can't do better and that we can't change and adapt to what the community's asking for. What I want it to show is that it's our level of commitment, right? This is not the first time that we have shown up to work together, and it's not going to be the last time. And we can't do this without each other. Community, how people identify and who they identify with is because there's a common thread. There is a common thread that runs through this city, whether it be We Are Kent or the sticker that I have on the back of my car that says, "Don't mess with Kent." I mean that with every fiber of my being, because this is our place, right? It means we are doing this, we're taking care of each other, we're committed to each other, and you don't get to come in and mess with that. You just get to help us make it better.
It's all been very well said. What comes to mind to me are the words of a great philosopher. LL Cool J said, "Don't call this a comeback. We've been here for years," right? And that's what it's about. And we're going to be here for years. And we're going to show up. And we're going to continue to do the work. I am so proud of this. I am so proud of our community. Let's do it. We'll be there.
Thank you. Again, I want to say thank you for you all's commitment, for you all's support. Again, and I know I'm going to create some controversy with this statement, but at the end of the day, my heart was a bit shaken when I saw the protests or the march here in the city of Kent was phenomenal, but I felt, and again, I'm speaking from the heart of a leader. I'm a pastor, the founding pastor of Redeemed by the Blood. And my heart was broken when our leaders' voices weren't heard. So that's when I came to the conclusion to say, I want to create a platform so that our leaders' voices can be heard. Because I know who Ralph is. I know who Dana is. I wanted our community to see who they really were. Outside of the uniforms and the work, I wanted them to see your guys' heart. So I says, I want to create a platform for them so that we all can be models and be held accountable to what we're saying here on this platform. So I want the people to see who Kent really is. I wanted people to see the real face of Kent, not the marching, not the protesting. All of that's old. Where do we go from here? Yeah. That's my number one focus. My goal was to create a platform for everybody to be able to address, and so people can really see who Kent is, opposed to through the lens of Seattle or through the lens of Washington, D.C., or through the lens of what happened in different states that caused a lot of this. Because before all of this got started, we were Kent. And now that it's done, we're still going to be Kent. So my goal is, this is not the end of it. I want to take everything that we've talked about and take it and allow it to manifest and allow us to sit down at the table. Let's really bring our minds together and let's really create change. Let's really really figure out how are we going to really move forward. And again, this is just the beginning of a conversation. This is just the beginning of us talking. But as I diddle with my wife says, I love my city officials. And if I got to just sleep in the church just to say I'm a part of Kent, I'll do it. Or bring my trailer to my parking lot, I'm willing to do that. But I love Kent. I love my city officials. I love my leaders, and I respect leadership. That's one thing that I've learned as a pastor is respect leadership, and they'll respect you. So thank you, Kanisha. Thank you, Brother Todd, Bill Boyce. God bless all of you, my wife, Madam Mayor, the Chief. You all are phenomenal, and I believe the sky is the limit, and we got so much more to come. There will be multiple parts because it just doesn't take, one day to resolve the issue that's been going on for many, many years. So thank you guys so much, and we love you, Kent.